Good evening. This is John and Glenna Miller of Joshua World Ministries, and we have some information we'd like to offer that is from a Christian perspective, but it's the truth whether you're a Christian or not. So we've been reading some books in the recent past, and we've come up with all this information, and I want you to know up front that this isn't intended to condemn anybody. It's not intended to offer people an opportunity for guilt or shame. This is just information, and it's designed to be something that is good for you. It's designed to be something that will bless you and help you to understand some very simple facts. So with that, I'd like to begin. We call this teaching "Choose Life, Choose Death," or "Choose Death" in smaller letters, and then "Choose Life" in big letters, because that's what we want to emphasize. I'm sure that you folks who are among the Christian camp, you're familiar with that verse. Well, we've got a huge teaching that we can wrap around that one verse. There are also some other issues, because what we know is that there are many Christians that view themselves as victims. They view themselves as being subject to the winds of life that whirl around them all the time, and they come to the conclusion, based usually on old programming from when they were a child, that they don't really have any control over those things. They don't have any control over their lives. They don't have any control over their health. They don't have any control over anything, and they've been programmed to believe that. So we would like to make a couple of other scriptures well known to all of you, if they're not already. There's a scripture that goes something like this: "Who is man that you are mindful of him?" And it goes ... "And you've crowned him with glory and honor ... And you've placed all the works of your hands under his feet." Now think about that. Is there anything in heaven? Is there anything on earth? Is there anything in hell that's not the works of his hands? Can you think of anything? I can't. So if all the works of his hands have been placed under our feet, then why should we live as a victim? Why should we live in the belief that we don't have any control over things, that life is going to happen to us, and there's nothing we can do about it? And once again, I don't think we need to. I don't think that people are being taught the truth. I think that a lot of people are being taught a lot of religious stuff, but it's not so they can become a victorious Christian necessarily. It's so they can fit into some kind of a religious system, and they can bow to the rule of people who want to have control over their lives. That's what I think about a lot of the stuff that's being taught in churches. So then we look at who we are. We are amazingly created.
Yes.
What we've been taught is that if we commit what is called sin, if we do something that is non-destructive, or something that is destructive to us or to other people, if you don't like the word sin, if we engage in those kind of activities, then we've been taught that bad things are going to happen spiritually. I think that's a commonality. We've been told all the bad things that are going to happen to us, that they're going to be devils and demons and all kinds of things, and they're going to torment us and afflict us, and then eventually we're going to go to some place that we're really not going to like. It's not going to be a vacation spot. And then we can take that one step further, and in normal taking the land teachings that we offer when we're doing seminars and our normal ministry, we show people how the spiritual stuff is affecting us emotionally, and how all kinds of bad things are happening to us emotionally, and how we can be free of those emotional issues. But now, let's take it to the next level. If all that is true, then what about us physically? God created us to be triune. He created us to be spirit, soul, and body. He created us with a soul that is very complex. We have a part of our soul that would be called the conscious mind. We have another part of our soul that's called the unconscious mind. And then we got the subconscious mind. And then we got many other layers of our soul. When we do our studies for TTL, we look at the fact that mind, soul, and heart essentially mean the same part of our being. They just represent different parts of that part. So we have a mind that is the shallow part of the soul. It's the conscious up here. And then we have the part that we commonly call the soul, which probably represents many parts of who we are. And it's this part in here. And then we've got the part that's known as the heart, and that's the really deep place in our soul. And that's where there's all kinds of stuff going on, and the scripture says we don't even know what's going on in there. And I think that's true. I think we don't know what's going on in there. I think that that's the interface through which we can function with our spirit and probably the Spirit of God. So we look at the different layers and we try to figure out how they fit together, and we see that they fit together absolutely. Normal science, normal medical establishment says that issues that relate to the soul need to be treated one way with counseling and one cluster of medications. And they say that all the issues that relate to the physical body should be treated another way, usually with medications or operations and other procedures that they can go through. But they separate them, and they say, well, there's this wall between these two. And what we're coming to believe is that there isn't a wall between these two, that they are linked very significantly. So we get to a place where we try to figure out why and how and what's going on really. And then that gets us into an issue of thoughts. See, we're gonna talk about thoughts and words and emotions and reactions and attitudes and perceptions and expectations and judgments and the things that we would consider soul issues. So we start with a thought. And what we discover is that thoughts produce a great many effects. We have a brain that is absolutely amazing.
Yes.
When a thought comes into our brain from whatever source, it lodges in a particular part of the brain, and then from there it moves up into the part of the brain where there's a huge amount of information stored. And to give you an idea, we have like trillions of brain cells that look like little trees. And I'm not going to get into all the names of stuff because most people don't care. But they look like little trees. I would call them little palm trees. And they got a main stalk or a trunk, and then they got all these little branches that come out. And those branches are like a computer system that stores information. They store memories and data and lots of information. And we have trillions of these cells in our brain. And what we find is that if you take all those little trees and you stuff them with all the branches they can hold, they'll hold enough information for 3 million years of constant input at the rate that you would receive it in a high school. Think about that. 3 million years. Our society tells people that once they get past 45 or so, they're supposed to start shutting down. Our society teaches that people are supposed to lose their memory. They're supposed to live with Alzheimer's disease and dementia and a lot of other nasty things. They're supposed to live in a vegetative mode eventually. I was just talking to a man here in this group, and he was saying, well, I'm doing really well for a man of 85, and my reaction is, hey, Caleb took the mountain of the giants at 85.
Amen.
You should be going strong. So we have this amazing brain that can store this amazing amount of information, and the question is, what happens then?
We also know from what medical science tells us that the brain is the only part of the body that doesn't age. The brain continues to get better if you use it properly. And intelligence is not fixed or static the way we were taught when I was a teacher. Intelligence grows as long as you use your brain, you use your mind in the right way. So
What's the right way?
Well, we'll talk about that.
Well,
What we
now.
have to do is we have to ask questions, we have to think about things, we have to do something with our brain besides just let somebody else put information into it. We have to use it. We have to think, we have to process, we have to question, we have to research, we have to do lots of different things to make our brain get more intelligent all the time.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. So then what? We go through life and we're accumulating information. We're accumulating memories. We're accumulating data. And then something happens and we're offered another piece of information, and it goes into that place in the brain where it's then shipped up into the upper part of the brain where it functions like an electrical breeze. There's this little thunderstorm in the brain, and all this lightning goes across the brain, and it starts looking for information that's relevant to this new little piece of information. So it finds memories, and from those memories it responds, the brain responds with some kind of a response. We were talking earlier, and I was saying, well, so that means that if you were, as a child, abused by a tall man in a blue suit, then you could be walking down the street as an adult woman, and you might see a tall man in a blue suit, and suddenly that would flash that memory back to you. You would have a flashback, and you might respond the same way you responded when you were that child being abused. And that's the correlation. You can respond in the same fear, in the same dread, in the same shame, in the same ways that you responded many years before. And all you had to do is see a man walking down the street. See, it acted as a trigger. And then what happens is that information goes to a little place in the center of the brain, and that place is a chemical factory. And it responds by producing chemicals associated with the event that you just remembered. And those chemicals flood through your body, and they look for little receptor sites on your cells. And when they find receptor sites, they plug into individual cells all over your body and tell you there is danger. You need to respond as though the danger is imminent. And it all happens in a flash. And those chemicals that are produced in the chemical factory can be a wide variety of chemicals. Some of them can be really bad. They can be extremely toxic to your cells, to your organs. If they find a place and they hook on long enough, they can even function like battery acid and start corroding the receptor sites on the cells. They can corrode other cells in your organs. They can corrode the little branches on the trees in your brain. They can do all kinds of damage. Or you can have a really good thought, and you can produce a completely different cluster of biochemicals, and they can flood through your body, and they can start looking for a place to hook on. And when they find receptor sites, they hook on. And then you get this wonderful feeling of well-being. Everything's wonderful. For those who don't know, before this teaching began, we were listening to praise worship. And I was remembering what we were studying earlier today, and what it said was, when you are listening to nice music, when you are talking in ways that are enjoyable, when you are joking and laughing and having fun, your body produces things called endorphins and enkephalins and serotonin and a variety of other things that are really good for you. And what they do is they flood through your body looking for places to hook on, and when they do, they stimulate little processes in the cells. Did you know that the cells are chemical factories also? And they do many things. They have a whole bunch of processes that go on. And what happens when those particular biochemicals attach to that cell is it causes good things to happen. And then the body starts healing itself. And the enkephalins are almost in the same family as opiates. And if you're in pain and if you're experiencing other things that are unpleasant, it will help anesthetize those things. And these are chemicals you are producing. You don't have to go buy them. You don't have to ingest synthetic things that were produced by people that are almost assuredly going to have negative side effects. You can have chemicals that you produced, that God built your body to produce naturally, and then you can experience only the good part of it and none of the negative side effects.
And the interesting thing about these good biochemicals that you produce is the fact that they are more powerful than the ones that are harmful to your body. And they will begin the process of healing in the cells that have been damaged by the toxic chemicals that you produce in your mind and in your chemical production area. And so these good chemicals, these biochemicals and the things that they produce can actually help your body to begin to heal. And that is really good news.
For that process to begin?
The process can begin within 4 days.
Why? Why 4 days?
Because the cells reproduce in that period of time.
Oh.
And so if you are subject to negative thinking and negative responses to something, for example, the man in the blue suit, if you are able to deal with that issue in such a way that you can give up the bad feelings that you have, if you can release, in our case as Christians, to the Lord those anger issues, the shame issues, all of those things, and if you can forgive and allow the Lord to fill you with forgiveness and even blessing the person who was an abuser, then those good chemicals begin to flow. And so this process is one that we get to control, because in the brain, along with the other things that God has put, He has put